In the last few decades, India has become a major player in the software sector. But when it came to electronics hardware, for a long time, India was mostly a buyer, not a maker. However, that story has started to gradually change over the last decade. Today, India is being spoken of as one of the fastest growing electronics manufacturing hubs in the world. In this context, let's make an attempt to understand what factors led to the rise of electronics production in India, which subsector of electronics is driving this growth, and is India truly manufacturing electronics or simply assembling them? If you are curious to find answers to these questions, you can analyze the dataset on value of electronics production in India compiled by our team at Dataful. Sourced from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, this dataset is clean, structured, and ready to use, making the data analysis hassle-free. To download, click the link in the description. Now back to the story. Over the past decade, India's electronics production has expanded at an extraordinary pace. Around 2014-15, the total value of electronics produced in India was under 2 lakh crore rupees. However, within a span of just 10 years, this figure had jumped to nearly 10 lakh crore rupees. In simple terms, electronics production has grown more than 5 times in less than a decade. This growth covers a wide range of products. It includes consumer electronics such as TVs and appliances, industrial electronics, strategic electronics for defense and space, computer and IT hardware, and even medical equipment. However, this rapid growth is not spread evenly across all these segments, and this is where the story becomes more interesting. One category which has completely changed the shape of India's electronics sector is the mobile phones category. Around 10 years ago, mobile phones made up only a small share of India's electronics production, roughly about 1/10 of the total value. But today, mobile phones alone account for nearly half of all electronics produced in the country. Such a massive scale of production is possible because the number of mobile phone manufacturing units has increased from just a handful to several hundred. At the same time, India's dependence on imported mobile phones has almost disappeared. This means phones that were once mostly imported are now largely made within the country. Meanwhile, other segments which have grown in absolute numbers lost their share in relative terms. Consumer electronics, which once made up nearly 1/3 of electronics production, now accounts for only about 1/10. Even industrial electronics followed a similar pattern with their share declining over time. So while electronics production overall has grown rapidly, it has become heavily concentrated around mobile phones only. Over the years, the government introduced focused interventions such as the National Policy on Electronics, production-linked incentive schemes, and the India Semiconductor Mission. These policies aimed to attract global manufacturers, build large-scale factories, reduce import dependence, and integrate India into global supply chains. At the same time, as global companies looked to diversify production, India emerged as a strong alternative. This brings us to why electronics manufacturing matters so much. Electronics sits at the heart of modern economies. It affects productivity, technological progress, job creation, and even national security. In a world where supply chains are being reshaped by geopolitical tensions and economic uncertainty, the ability to produce electronics domestically has become strategically important. However, there is also an important criticism that needs to be addressed. A large part of India's mobile phone output involves assembly rather than full-scale manufacturing. Assembly work typically requires lower skill levels and therefore generates lower wages compared to deeper manufacturing. At the same time, assembly can be seen as an entry point into higher value manufacturing. It helps build scale, supplier networks, logistical capabilities, and manufacturing experience. In fact, for many countries, large-scale assembly has acted as the first step before moving into higher value manufacturing over time. So the real challenge ahead is about what we can do to successfully execute this transformation. Which means the key question going forward is not about growth alone, but about depth. So, what do you think? Can India convert its scale in electronics production into long term technological strength? Can mobile led success spill over into other electronics segments? And can India climb higher in the global electronics value chain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear your perspectives. Research for this story is powered by GoPy and Tagore.ai. To know more, click on the related links in the description.